Hi, it's Steph. Earlier I price checked like a supreme pizza at one of the big chain pizza places, and I was somewhat pleasantly surprised to see that a large was only $17. I was happy to see that it wasn't full-on price gouging, because if you go with a special, of course that means you get a better price on the pizza, but somebody has to compromise. $17 to me is too much for something that you could be making better at home yourself. Even if $17 sounds like a small price to pay to have your dinner delivered to your door, imagine what's going to happen when you want your dinner at dinner time, peak hours. It's probably going to arrive looking exactly like me after a really intense HIIT workout. It will be sweaty, greasy, disheveled, probably disoriented, and reflecting back on its 20s, wondering how it didn't appreciate the fact that it didn't have to diet and work out this hard just to remain moderately overweight. Oh, pizza. So tonight in the From Scratchee kitchen, I'll be showing you how to make a pizza dough that is easy, quick, and delicious. Your whole family is gonna love it, and there will be no more compromising on pizza night. The ingredients for this pizza dough are super straightforward, so I'm just gonna talk you through them as we make it. We're gonna be using some yeast. I like to buy mine in this little jar now. I'm not partial to any particular brand, it just has to be active yeast, and I found that I was just using it so often, it's way easier when you put it in a jar. Now, in order to activate yeast, you need to have warm water. I've got some here. It needs to be between 100 and 114 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason for that is because it has to be hot enough to wake the yeast up and let it do its thing, but not so hot that it kills it. I'm gonna take about a tablespoon of sugar. Yeast loves sugar. And then we'll add our yeast. I give it a little swirl just to rile everybody up. And then we're gonna set it aside to let it proof. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a few minutes. Next is the flour for your pizza dough. And lately I've been loving using bread flour. That being said, you can 100% substitute all-purpose flour. I'll also be using some semolina when we roll the dough out, just so you get those little crunchy bits at the bottom of the crust, but those are optional as well. It's totally choose your own adventure here. And if you've got yeast and all-purpose flour on hand, you are in business for pizza night. So don't hesitate to substitute. So I put my flour in. Next I'm gonna add some garlic powder, because you know I love to season every element of every dish unmercifully. And then I'm also going to add some Italian seasoning. And then I'm going to add salt. Guess how much? About a palmful. Once I've got all the dry ingredients, I'm just gonna mix everything around while it's still dry, so that everything gets dispersed nice and evenly. And then it's time to add back that liquid. You know your yeast is proofed when you see a nice foamy cap on it. That usually happens after about 5 to 10 minutes max, and that's how you know that your yeast is ready to go to work. Before I put the water in, I'm gonna go ahead and add the olive oil, and I just add it to a little well right in the center. Give that water a swirl again to make sure that the cap doesn't stick to the sides of the cup, and then you just start adding. Now this recipe is meant to be a little bit scant on water, just to make sure that you can add it all and get all of the yeast in without worrying that your dough will end up too wet. Since flour isn't just affected by the amount of water you put in, it's also affected by the humidity and temperature of the environment. It's a good idea to have a little bit of extra water standing by. It should be warm just like our initial pour, and you can just add a little at a time until the dough starts to come together in kind of a rough ball. Once the dough starts to take shape, you can actually get it out onto the counter and just knead it. It's as if your kitchen is its own pizzeria. And after this video, it is. seriously. Kneading the dough helps it become more uniform, and I'd recommend doing it for maybe 3 to 5 minutes or until your arms fall off, whichever comes first. The dough will take on a really uniform appearance, and it will look like the pizza dough you see on Instagram or in the movies. That's how you know you're done. I have my little cutie pie pizza dough ball here, and I'm gonna drop it right back into the bowl that I mixed it up in. I have a damp paper towel. I'm going to lay it down over my pizza dough ball like it is a Korean face mask, and then I'm going to set it aside for 20 minutes, and the next time we see her, she's gonna be looking 10 years younger. 2 things happened while we were on break. First, about 10 minutes in, I turned on the oven so that it would be ready to go when our pizza dough is ready. Second, I came back to check out my pizza dough, and I thought, girl, did you hit the buffet while I was away? If you can say that to your pizza dough, it's ready. I have a pizza stone. I do love it. I use it all the time. They're good for more than just pizza. So if you're interested in purchasing one, I think it's a good buy. If you don't have stoneware, don't sweat it. You can roll out your pizza dough on the countertop and then pop it into a cookie sheet or whatever you plan to cook your pizza on. I'm using semolina flour here. I think it gives it a nice crunch on the bottom, and you want to concentrate most of the flour in the middle. You shouldn't have like a mound or anything, but by the time your pizza crust reaches the outer edges, it's already been really rolled through that middle part, so it'll kind of spread on its own. Plop it down, and I'm going to use just a little bit of the bread flour across the top, and I'll keep some handy just in case I need it for the rolling pin. And we're just going to start working it out. You can curl the edges in so you get more of a hand-tossed effect without having to pick up pizza dough off the floor. If you do it that way, I would recommend only putting semolina flour in the middle. That way you don't wind up with this super crunchy flour on the top of the crust of your pizza. You can take mozzarella or a different type of cheese if you like and tuck it right under here, and then you have stuffed crust pizza. And that is always a crowd pleaser. Am I right? It's time to dress it. I like to get out the good olive oil. And by that I mean this was like $6. It is good though. I put salt around the edge of the crust because I can. So you'll just run the oil all the way out to the edge. That's going to be a real boring pizza with no toppings. If you bake the crust most of the way through, then you don't wind up with a crust that is soggy in the middle. Also, by baking the crust most of the way through, it's less time to wait once we put it back in with the toppings. I'm hungry. I pulled my crust out of the oven after about 5 minutes, or when it starts to look just a little bit solid, and now it'll just sit and rest while I gather up the rest of my toppings. Then it'll be time to dress this gal up and take her to dinner. Thank you so much for checking out this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe, sign up to get more from the From Scratchee Kitchen. If you try this recipe out, leave a comment below. If you take a picture, which you should, post it on Instagram and tag me. It's FromScratchee_with Steph.